Good afternoon to you. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com here. Hurricane Outlook and Discussion Time, Tuesday, August 31st, the last day of August 2021. We have a lot to talk about. I am still in the Houston, Webster, Texas area. Came here yesterday with the crew, with Matt and Brent, as an oasis, if you will. Louisiana is in a bad way right now, a good part of it, because of the hurricane, because of Hurricane Ida. So we felt that it was best to get as far away from it as possible and not take up hotel rooms nearer to where people really need them. Houston has a lot more capacity for that. And so we're here refreshing ourselves, getting ready to go back into Louisiana tomorrow to start rounding up the equipment that we set out for Ida. And I'll talk about that later today. We need to get back into the groove and the swing of things. So here we are. Let's discuss some hurricanes, or at least future hurricanes that are probably on the way, and everything else, right? So let's start off with a radar animation courtesy of Mark Nissenbaum over at Florida State University, really underscoring the gravity of this situation, which is just an enormous piece of energy here with the remnants of Ida. Now a depression moving through Tennessee, the tail of it down here still extending into the very warm Gulf of Mexico. It's trying to feed itself and stay alive. I mean, it's not really a living thing. It's a process in the atmosphere, but it's trying to pull in the moisture. I mean, all the way back as far as the southwest Gulf, all the way in through these feeder bands. Heavy rains, not too heavy, but heavy enough in parts of the Appalachians there. And even in areas here where there was tremendous flooding in the wake of Fred. You remember that? Yes, we had tremendous flooding. We had the loss of life in Tennessee, unrelated to a tropical system per se. But this is a big rainmaker, severe weather threat in parts of the upstate of South Carolina. Pay attention as this moves through. I say it often, and I'll say it again. The rainfall is a hazard. Heavy rain, the truckers on the interstate systems, just anybody traveling, flash flooding, river flooding. And by the way, river flooding down in Louisiana and Mississippi is going to be a problem coming up as well. But this is the current radar setup. That's what's happening with Ida. The remnants of Ida now moving through the eastern parts of the United States. Eventually, this will get out over the ocean and move on up into the westerlies, as we say, and that will be that. So a couple of things I want to point out. A couple of interesting, and I'm going to be honest with you, very concerning things are coming to light here. I feel like I've been gone for a month, and I think my family feels that way too. But I kind of have been very busy here for the last 2 weeks. This is the third tropical system that I have intercepted since August 16th. That's amazing. It was Fred, and then Henri, and now Ida. Wow. Why? Why have we had such a big influx of activity all of a sudden, this big uptick? Part of it is the very warm Atlantic. The Atlantic basin as a whole, warmer than average. So there's a lot more available energy, a lot more upward motion, generally speaking. Moisture. Yes, there are still Saharan air layer outbreaks, and there's dry air every once in a while out there. Sure, dust outbreaks. But by and large, the Atlantic has been favorable, and we saw this coming as far back as April. And now it's coming to pass. So, scam calls. So, I do like it that your cell phone will at least tell you that it's a scam caller. So the Atlantic is primed. We have the MJO, the Madden-Julian oscillation, swing into a favorable phase that enhances this upward motion. It's kind of an umbrella of opportunity for stuff to develop. What I'm very concerned with, though, is this. In recent days, the Eastern Pacific has really cooled off. And we have this cool stretch through here. These are anomalies, departures from the average. Pretty much the entire tropical Pacific now along the equator is running below average. And we're also losing the heat here, in the northeast part of the Pacific. And it's not as warm over here from Hawaii. We had Linda that went out this way. So this is just getting less and less favorable for tropical cyclones. Very little upward motion out here. Probably still have some development, while this is just getting warmer and warmer and warmer. Only a little bit, but it's subtle. 1/4 degree Celsius warmer than average. You know, it all adds up. In this enormous zone of positive anomalies, there's not one area in here that's blue like we see over in the Pacific. The Atlantic is in a little bit of a lull right now. and it's almost humorous to say that, compared to where we were with big hurricanes. It's getting ready to come back. But that's kind of this intra-seasonal variability that we're seeing. The Madden-Julian oscillation has kind of swung out of favor, and when it comes back again in a few weeks, this is going to be waiting for it. The cooler Pacific, the much warmer Atlantic than we've seen all summer. Now it's the warmest that it's been, right when the time that the peak of the season is coming climatologically. So we're going to have some activity coming, and then we're going to have a lot of activity coming, probably mid-September through the month of October. 6, 7, 8 more named storms easily, probably 2 or 3 more powerful hurricanes as well. This is the kind of pattern that sets that up. So I'm concerned about that. We've had major impacts already, and we're not even close to the peak yet. We're still a couple of weeks away, just shy of a couple of weeks from the traditional peak of the hurricane season. So this very warm Atlantic out here, the cooling of the equatorial Pacific, coinciding at the climatological peak of the season. You think it's bad now. I believe that it could get worse if one of these larger, more powerful systems makes its way towards land at the inopportune time. And let me just zoom in here real quick while we're on this subject. Look at these anomalies, these departures from average along the northeast coast of the United States and even parts of the mid-Atlantic here, the southeast. We've eroded some of the positive anomalies away in the Gulf, but these can return very quickly. The Gulf can rebound very quickly. It's only late August, for goodness sakes. So something to really keep an eye on as we go forward. This is also like a head scratcher. Remember we showed this? I know I showed it in the days leading up to Ida, and there was a lot made of this warm eddy. Well, Ida ran right over, let's use the color black here. Ida ran right over that warm eddy on its way into Grand Isle here. This is roughly what it did, not exactly. It ran over that. And then I thought that there would be a noticeable difference. This was yesterday. This is always a day behind. I'll check it again tomorrow, but this is satellite derived. I figured that there would be this big carved spot, like a cold wake. There's not. That's still there. All the upper ocean heat content that was around near Louisiana, that's generally still there, just a little bit of an erosion of it here. All right, so it's not over. Ida maybe changed the stakes a little bit, but with a couple of weeks lull of anything moving into the Gulf, it's going to rebound, and we're still very much vulnerable going forward. Not trying to frighten you at all. We got to talk facts here and make sure you stay on your guard, especially if you haven't had to deal with anything this year. You know, that keep an eye out. I mean, I thought for sure it would get cut, but it didn't. It's still there. Very warm eddy, high ocean heat content. This is an interesting map. Don't let the blues fool you. It's just that the Gulf is so warm that the powers that be that make this chart change the scale just a little bit. The blue areas are actually 28.5 degrees to 29 Celsius. That's very warm. That's like 83, 84 degrees Fahrenheit. And so yes, it's cooled off a little bit. A little bit of the heat was taken out through this area, but it's still very warm in the low 80s with mid to upper 80s still surrounding Louisiana and mid to upper 80s all throughout the Texas coastline and the offshore waters. Very warm as well near Florida. Make no mistake, the hurricane season is very much at play. And I just don't want to lose sight of that. You think, well, we've had one, maybe that'll be it. You know, hope by itself is not an adequate enough planning tool. You have to be ready, all right? Looking at the broader picture, pretty much the entire tropical Atlantic into the subtropics, very, very warm with high ocean heat content values, or at least high enough to support intense hurricanes all the way up to the coastline of the southeast, certainly around Florida, the Caribbean. I mean, we're not done. I just want people to make sure they understand that. We're just getting started with plenty that we have to keep up with over the coming weeks. Actual water temperatures, just to show you, along the mid-Atlantic in my neck of the woods in Wilmington, North Carolina, 29 Celsius just offshore, right up to the shoreline, the shelf water, 29 Celsius in the Gulf Stream. And then that 26 Celsius, or right about 80 Fahrenheit, pretty far to the north. even just a couple hundred miles south of our friends in Canada, in Atlantic Canada, Nova Scotia. So if you had a hurricane, just as an example, turning the corner, just saying, it doesn't have long after leaving the north wall of the Gulf Stream of very warm water, and those water temperatures are well above 2, 3, 4 degrees Fahrenheit above the long-term average. They are much warmer than they should be, especially from an energy perspective. So what do we got? Well, I showed you the remnants of Ida here, still a depression over Tennessee, and all the rain associated with that. We do have a system down in the Southwest Caribbean that's certainly worth watching, but I'm not too rattled by it just yet. Every once in a while, a computer model, a deterministic model, will develop something that goes up into this area, but until that becomes more what we call, not unanimous, but if there's more indication of it in the ensemble guidance, where it's just more than one model. It's kind of, you get one person's opinion and you go, I don't know about that. But if you have 100 people that have the same opinion, then maybe that opinion is more fact. You understand? That's how the ensembles work. One deterministic model is not a forecast. The ensembles are not a forecast, but at least they give you more confidence. And right now, my confidence is not very high that something will develop out of that, and that is fine with everybody. While I was dealing with Ida, we already had Julian. I missed it. Never even made a mention of it. That's on me. I was busy, but at least it didn't really bother anybody. I guess shipping interest. But Julian has come and gone. Now we're up to Kate, and it's dying away out here over the Atlantic. Kind of a in-between moment here where it's not very favorable throughout this region. The MJO is kind of left, and so you kind of have this ho-hum set up, if you will. But off the coast of Africa and over Africa and points east, very favorable upward motion. And we do have this area. This is 90L, and it is well on its way to becoming our next depression and almost a shoe-in to become our next storm and probably our next significant hurricane, going to be somewhere in this badly drawn box in about a week, maybe less. And we'll have to watch. And I'm going to show you something in a minute that will kind of give you some pause about that. Like, yeah, you definitely want to watch this. You never say, well, it's a fish storm, guaranteed. We'll get to that in a minute. So what's all this look like on satellite? Well, here we go from Tropical Tidbits, the remnants of Ida. Still a bunch of energy. I marvel at this. It's such a shame that people suffer the way they do. Businesses close. It disrupts everything. It's just the way it is. We have to seriously learn to adapt better. I know that's easy for me to say, but other than that, other than the destruction that they bring, they are really incredible to track. And you see the energy that is associated with them and the purpose that they serve. It is remarkable, and I think that fascination, will help to explain better to people what to expect. There's 90L coming off of Africa, already off Africa, whatever, and well on its way. Now, I will say this about 90L, and you've heard this song before. Luckily, I'm not going to sing, but you get the idea. The longer this takes to develop, the more west it'll go. Pretty much a rule of thumb. It's not perfect, and it doesn't guarantee a landfall, but the longer this takes to really get going and kind of fill into the atmosphere and maybe feel some of those influences from the north that could draw it up, the longer it takes to do that, and it just makes sense, the more west it will go, and it can get under that western Atlantic ridge, and then we have to worry about it. Right now, it's just something to keep an eye on, a novelty perhaps, especially if it gets really strong and it remains out over the open ocean over here, bothering only shipping interests. I guess it can get as strong as it wants, as long as it doesn't bother people, right? All right, so looking at the vorticity signature of our features, huge signature for Ida's leftovers. There's Kate in here, barely anything down in the Caribbean, so that's good news. And then the very large signal here for 90L, and that might mean that it does take longer to get going. Almost looks like an eye in there, doesn't it? But that's not what it is. It's just an optical illusion or whatever, an artifact of the way that these images are compiled. But this whole mess here, the longer it takes, the more west it will go. Something to just watch in the future. And we'll look at it real quick, speaking of the future, on the ECMWF, the Euro. This is the 12Z guidance from today. There's the remnants of Ida. Here's Kate. Here's 90L. put these into motion, 24 hours. The remnants of Ida moving up through West Virginia, finally kind of amplifying a little bit as it interacts with a trough. We call that baroclinic processes or baroclinic forcing. And then it goes up into the North Atlantic and gets kind of drawn into the westerlies there, up into Newfoundland, and I'm sorry, Newfoundland's over here, southeast Quebec, northwest of Nova Scotia. Sorry, I'm tired. Atlantic Canada, the Canadian Maritimes first, Bay of Fundy, that region, and it's interesting that it amplifies because it's got this jet stream energy that kind of gets involved. But then there's the next system. This would be Larry, and it's a little bit more south and a little bit more west. Each run, big chunk of high pressure sitting out here, not really as thick as we saw earlier in the summer. It's just one of those in-between moments. We don't have a big solid ridge that'll just drive this west, and that's a good thing. That doesn't mean it can't fill back in, though. So we'll have to see. That's day 4, day 5, day 6. There's a weakness. Generally speaking, right in here is kind of like a valley between the mountains. And, we'll have to see. That's 6 days out. All I'm going to say, just got to keep it real, as I say. Remember when it was almost a sure thing that what became Ida was going to get buried into the Southwest Gulf and into Mexico? And look how that turned out. All right, so we'll just wait and see. 6 days from now, a lot could happen. And that's reflected over at Storm 2K, one of our partners, and they support what I do with their funding through their own crowdfunding. So I like to show some of what they're thinking. Some very smart and capable folks over there, even if they have a neat little cute screen name like Cheesy Weather Guy. I bet Cheesy Weather Guy is fun to hang out with. I like that kind of a name. But they know what they're talking about. That's the beautiful thing in this. You get a consensus. You sort of read the chatter, if you will. And on this message board, it's really good to see people that know what they're posting and know what they're talking about. It's not just a bunch of trash talk one way or the other. It's going to develop and you have confirmation bias or whatever. It really does help sometimes to look and see what are people saying. So looking at Storm 2K today, yes, 12Z GFS, another southwest shift in that guidance. I showed you the Euro, but the GFS, a little bit of a southwest shift, that delay in developing a little bit more to the west and south. Canadian, got to watch it. The CMC model is what they're talking about there. Cold miser, 1, 2, 3, making that point. All right, and then way, 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 way inside of Bermuda on the longer range, 240 hours out. There it is. There's Bermuda right there. That's what I mean. We have to watch. The Canadian, used to be sort of, I don't want to say made fun of, but the Canadian model as a global model has not always performed in the top tier, but it has gotten better. All right, the physics behind it, the programming. So it might be onto something here. And look at that. There's a big clue here. And that is, you see it? Huge area of high pressure. Where? Northwest Atlantic. Why? Part of the reason, and we go back to this, the very warm anomalies over the Northwest Atlantic promote more ridging, generally speaking. So this has a little bit of merit. This is why I read this stuff. All right, and even the 12Z Euro, so says Cheesy Weather Guy, shifted southwest and a little stronger. We got to watch. You never know. All right, connect and follow. The Patreon crowd really grew during Ida. I cannot thank you enough. It's going to allow me to do even more equipment, more capability. So thank you for helping us grow. We continue to grow it. It's not closed. If you're interested in being a part of that community, it's patreon.com/HurricaneTrack. It's not just the live video. We do a lot of really neat interactions there. Zoom meetings between us where you get to interact with me and the other members. A really, really neat thing. It's far different from a traditional subscription service. And, of course, I am on Twitter, which also grew substantially during Ida. And why not? People are seeking out reliable information, and I hope I provide that for you. CJ handles a lot of our Facebook stuff. I do at least this part of the YouTube. Our good friend Mike Cornelius handles a lot of the live feeds and the back-end stuff, and it's all part of HurricaneTrack the brand that's been around since 1999. Can you believe it? Wow. So follow. There's my email if you ever want to email me with a suggestion or an idea. And real quick, a couple of people were asking during the height of everything, hey, I don't really want to become a part of a membership or whatever. I like what you do. That's just not for everybody, but I want to send you some cash to help fund equipment. I want to be a part of this, and how do I do that? Are you on PayPal or Venmo or Cash, whatever? And there's so many ways to crowdfund stuff. And so, yes, the email address is attached to my PayPal. So anytime you ever are, you know what? I'll send you something for gas or cover those hotels that you got or buy some equipment. That's how you can do that. I forgot to mention that during the live feeds. It probably wasn't appropriate at that point, honestly. But now that things are a little quieter, that is how you can do that if you want to just use the old traditional PayPal method. Anyway, that is it from me. Tomorrow is September. Can you believe it? Cue all of the, what is that, a Justin Timberlake song, at least one of them, and then Green Day. Here it comes. Have yourself a good rest of your Tuesday. As always, thanks for tuning in and giving me your time and attention. I'm Mark Sudduth, getting back on my toes again and my feet after Hurricane Ida. We'll go in tomorrow, try to pick up our equipment, and I'll update you as we progress through that. All right, thanks for watching. I'll talk to you again tomorrow.